And I think what we're discussing here is, during your term of service, exactly, what do you see and what are some of those, what are some of those issues that are making it a challenge? So, in looking at that, what do you, now that you can go hindsight, because they're both currently sitting on the commission, in hindsight and what was in your book, what do you felt like your highlights of your term of service was, Jimmy?
Well, actually, besides my 3 attempted recalls,
which were all unsuccessful, totally.
Anyway, I think some of the major accomplishments that I can look at with our commission that was sitting when I was there, we started out with a skateboard park. That's something that's been on the books that we wanted to do. They had planned it for about the last 3 years before we actually got started. We got that started, we got it completed, second recall, because people didn't want it in the park. They wanted it out in Williamsburg, they wanted it someplace else. But we've had more people, young people down there using that skateboard than any other facility for the youth in Sierra County. And that one, to me, was really was a good thing to have done here for us. Next project was the Morgan Street Flood Control Project. This was a project that had been in the works for 20-something years. They had the money for it about 3 different times. The money was spent because it wasn't used or it was taken back. And finally we got together with everybody. We got the project started and it was completed. It's not completed as of yet. There's still one more phase of it. But 99% of it was done. The people that lived in Williamsburg, down on Beater, places like that flooded out at least 2 or 3 times a year, it has completely solved those problems for them. And that was for safety items, that was a great one. And the next one was the valves were opened to fill the effluent storage pond on June 6, 2002. This was a project where we took the effluent water, which had been dumping into the Rio Grande, just giving to the people down the hill from us for years and years and years, 50 years, and we were getting no value out of it. By changing it over and using the effluent water, reusing it for watering things like the golf course, a high school, this was saving something like probably 3,000 to 5,000 gallons a month of water that was being taken out of our city water wells. This was the equivalent of actually drilling 3 more wells and putting those online to provide the potable water. And those are still being used currently today. On May the 31st, the groundbreaking for the wall. This was about a 3-year project before we got to that point. That has brought more recognition to the city than probably most of the other projects that we've done. This was something that needed to be done, and we had people that were dedicated to getting it done. And for that one, I personally, I've got a lot of good friends up there on the wall. And I know that that was needed. On March the 2nd, 2006, I was fortunate enough to be called to Las Cruces to meet the governor down there, where we signed into bill the spaceport law. And there was 2 bills signed that day, and one of them being that helped us was the spaceport bill to make it official. And another item that I believe has helped Sierra County and TRC, and I always say Sierra County because one of the things, and I'll get back to this in a minute, while I'm thinking about this, if I don't, I forget it. One of the things that I really am most proud of is that during the 8 years that we spent together, we brought Sierra County together. Williamsburg, we quit fighting, we started working together. Elephant Butte, we helped them get their sewer plant. They become a city, and we had a great rapport with Elephant Butte and the state park out there. We also involved Williamsburg entirely in everything that we were doing. And if you ever get a chance, you need to just look at this. It shows that progression. And like I say, that was probably the first time in the history of Sierra County that everybody agreed and it actually worked together. The next item that to me was a real good project was getting Walmart to finally agree to come to Sierra County. That was my number 3 recall. We had so many people that were against the big box coming to TRC. It was going to put everybody out of business. Well, a few it did, I will admit that. But if you look downtown now, the businesses that are still in business has changed their method of doing business to the point that they are competitive to any other company that comes in. And the prices and everything else were down to the point where they were acceptable, I'm going to say, to almost everybody in TRC. And some of the projects that I wished we would have finished, which we haven't done yet, but one of them, we started a project to rebuild or build another hospital in Pulen. And I really feel that we're getting closer, and it will happen. It's just a matter of you guys working another hour a day to get that started. The longer it sits there and you don't use the money, it's the same as telling Santa Fe that, hey, we don't really need that hospital. Take this money back, send it down to Hatch. You know, they want a beautiful super center down there. So we need to look at that and get that started and get it going again and make sure that put the money down somewhere on it. That was my almost 4th recall. Because the land purchases and things of that nature, that was, in hindsight, I can see that it was a little high. It was really high. But in order to ask for money, you have to have something on the ground that says you can do what you want to do with that money and use it. And over my years of going to Santa Fe and becoming acquainted with the way they do business, and with John Arthur Smith and his method of doing business, he wants jobs and he will provide money, normally, if it's available, to do those projects. But he wants them done. He don't want them set. There's millions and millions of dollars that he has given to other projects 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that's still in limbo. And that was the money that they started taking back this last year. And if we don't do something, our money will be in that same category.
Rookie?
So I would like
Yeah.
to say again, just thank you for letting me be part of Lois and the group that we had.
Being the first woman elected to the City Commission in 1990 was an eye-opener. First of all, I didn't feel welcome. I didn't feel welcome at the time because I didn't think the males on the commission were very excited to have a female serve. And so with that stated, I knew that I was going to have to learn everything I could learn about the workings of a city commission. So I went to the sewer plant, and the city workers that worked out there taught me everything that they could about the sewer plant. Gene Hopkins or Hoskins was running the utilities at the time, and he taught me everything that he knew about our own utility company. And I did that with every aspect within the city. I found at the time that what we needed to work on was the failing infrastructure when I got in there in 1990. And so there really wasn't a lot of talk about what can we do with the town, you know, how can we make it better, that sort of thing. When I was on the commission, we had to focus on the failing infrastructure. So at the time we had 5 legislative representatives, and the City Commission had not asked for money from the legislature in 20 years. So I brought 5 of our legislators in to teach us how to do that. And we met at KBOPS. I think Freddie was present for that. and they taught us how to choose one of them to introduce a bill, that sort of thing. I remember Mayor Dar at the time saying, she'll never get any money, she'll never get any money. So we did introduce a bill. Senator Smith was the one that, I think it was Senator Smith was the one that introduced it for us. And I think it brought in about $137,000 for the expansion of the sewer plant at the time. And from then on, the commission began going to the legislature to ask for smaller amounts of money for the failing infrastructure. The one that worried me the most was there were not a lot of monies that had been set aside for the upkeep of the utility company, which is what helps the city run. If the city didn't have its own utility company, I don't know how it would run. It brings in the revenue. So it was very, very important to figure out how we were going to generate revenues, set them aside so that the electric company could always be at top grade. So it was the roads, it was the airport, it was the sewer plants, it was all the infrastructure, the pipes under the roads, and still are in some areas so old that you couldn't really come in and pave without tearing up the roads first to replace the old water lines before you came in and paved. One of the things that I find very interesting, and I don't know how this is ever going to get solved, but in 1990 when I was first elected, one of the first projects was to cover the swimming pool. And we continue to work on that today. And I think the reason why that project keeps getting set aside is that the monies that are needed within the city for so many other important infrastructure projects, then the swimming pool cover goes by the wayside and continues to. Well, that's been going on for 20 years, you know. So those are the things that I worked on when I first got elected. Oh, and I guess I can say that one of the things I'm most proudest of is being elected the first woman, because then it opened it up for other women to feel comfortable to run, and now we've had 3 or 4 other women that have served on the commission. And
as mayors.
And as mayors, yes. Well, an interesting thing that happened while I was mayor for the city of TRC, that was back in 1994, and I always say that the town at that time was run by women, and I'll tell you why. I was the first woman mayor, and we had a woman that was the superintendent of schools. We hired a woman chief of police, and the women that were working in the banks, the presidents of the banks were women, and the person running the hospital was a woman.
And things went well.
And didn't they go well? We had no problem.
You don't expect me to reply to that, do you?
Because we're all so caring, that's why everything went